We gonna talk here about what wise initiative can achieve for someone who has gotten rid of psychological complexes.
After a period of rehabilitation from addiction that took 4/5 of his 20s, plus the last 3 years of his second decade, he entered another phase. Yes, it is free of excessive dopamine stimulants, but it is more like the hibernation of a bear in winter. He spends his entire days either lying on his bed or in front of a computer, playing with his peers or watching entertainment clips. Addiction occupied his entire days, so after he got rid of it, there was nothing he knew how to do, except sit at home and wait. What is he waiting for? He also does not know. He especially does not know, since the least that can be said for this thing is that it will not come. He had real and virtual addictions, starting his day with a few sniffles and ending it in front of the screen. The question here is how he ended up like this. Is he just a lazy person looking for quick pleasures? No, in fact, due to some of the events he went through during his childhood, especially in the first years in which a person's personality is formed, he was convinced that he is a failure, not good at doing anything, and that others always better, which contributed to his disorder, which affected his school performance, and thus he decided to reliance on rapid dopamine stimulants. Yes, he was not successful in his decision. In fact, he was very wrong. But this is what happened. His stagnation phase continued for a period of time, as he spent his entire day in front of a computer, after he went to sleep. During the first years of a person's life, the body is young and youthful and can tolerate many things, so that the physical effects of various addictions do not appear strongly, and sometimes they don't appear at all. But with advancing age, things become different, because the accumulations resulting from passage of years must become heavier. The body's endurance capacity decreases, and thus it begins to collapse. This is what seemed happen to him, as his hair began to fall out heavily, and dark circles appeared under his eyes, in addition to hearing crackles with every joint he moved, and an unexplained cough that constricted his chest. He was confused because these symptoms are, of course, not normal, so he decided to search the internet for the reasons this is happening to him, as he learned that the core of his symptoms was excessive sitting, and lack of exposure to sunlight, and lack of body's exposure to nature. He felt a threat to his health, so he decided to at least go on a trip to the outskirts of his city and camp in nature for a few days. A good step that has a great benefits for him to begin with, and it does not cost much either. Knowing that, he decided to bring his own food with him, because he did not have much confidence in someone else's cooking. At dawn, one day, he went out on his bike, heading to a hill location. He decided that it would be the best location for him, after browsing a map of the suburbs of his city. After his arrival, he set up a tent in a beautiful place among green trees that pump in a cool air, and gave a wonderful view, but at the same time, their branches did not block the sun's rays. The natural factors that touched his internal and external organs relieved him of the pressure of his closed room. As a result, he began to feel that his body was more energetic, and that the coughing continued to decrease. Not only this, but all the symptoms and warning messages that his body was alerting him with, it decreased or disappeared altogether. Observing the herds grazing in front of him, in addition to the flocks flying above him, gave his eyes and brain relief, because he needed to free his sight in a wide place and look far away. After spending 5 days in his camp, he noticed that at the same time, around 6 o'clock in the evening, a man in his late 50s comes to gather his flock in order to bring them into the barn at night, but he finds it difficult. Notice that the man seems nervous in making an effort to gather the herd, even though the herd does not go far away, and he also rides a horse while he works. For 5 days, he did not understand why this shepherd, making all this effort in gathering an almost gathered herd, even though he was riding a horse. So he decided to go next day to inquire about the matter. When 6 o'clock in the evening arrived, he descended from the hill where he was camping and went to the man's place. As he approached, the guard dogs began barking behind the fence. He hesitated a little in his walk, because he feared that one of them would cross behind the fence and pounce on him. He decided to walk parallel to the fence, while leaving a distance which enabled the guard to see him. The guard shouted, telling him that there is nothing to see here, because the remaining distance is private property. He replied to him, saying that he want to meet the shepherd who gather the herd at this hour, riding his horse. The man, in fact, is the owner of the land. So when the guard learned that this person asking for him, he went out. So he asked why he want to meet him. He replied, saying that he saw him gathering his herd from above the hill where he is camping. So he wants to ask him about something. The guard hesitated at first, but after some back and forth, he was convinced to call the owner, saying to himself, "What's the harm?" The guard returned to his headquarters to contact the owner. When he answered, he informed him that a young man in his late 20s is asking to see him. The owner asked what this person want. "Is there anyone with him?" The guard replied that he did not know the purpose for which he come, because the young man told him that only the shepherd would understand that. Regarding the second matter, he is alone. The owner thought and said to himself, "What is the harm?" After a few seconds of his silence on the phone, he answered the guard, saying to tell the young man to wait. The man finished saddling his horse, and before he began gathering his herd, he headed to the fence to meet the young man. They met and greeted each other. After that, the young man said to the owner, "6 days have passed since I am camping on the hill there, and every day, at a time like this, I see you gathering your herd with difficulty, even though it does not go far away." The owner looked at him in amazement, and replied that the animals he taking care of might look like sheep of the same type from afar, but they are actually of different types. He collects them and sorts them according to their type, before bringing them into sleep inside the barn. After the large big entrance to the barn, 3 roads branch off, leading to smaller barns that separated, and here lies the difficulty of the matter, because the difference between the 3 types is not large, so he must carefully check it. He also couldn't keep it locked inside for fear that it will not produce wool of high quality, because he grazes it in order to sell its wool. They are sheep of a rare species, so he released them so they don't feel the difference between the farm and their natural environment. Also, deep down, he loves this work, because it is his first project which he raised capital till he became a successful businessman. For him, this work is like birthplace, and he feels very happy while doing it. The young man thanked the owner for his patience and asked permission to leave. He took a few steps and heard the owner calling him. Then he offered to take a tour with him today while he gathered his herd. The young man was very happy because he would ride a horse for the first time. The owner started sorting his sheep so he could bring them in. It was an enjoyable experience for the young man. But it's not just fun and enjoyment that he got out of that tour. When the owner finished his work and it was time to part ways, the young man told him that he had noticed that these sheep, each type, have a different skull shape. The owner laughed a little and then told him that there is no such difference between these types in any scientific references that talk about them. The young man heard the owner laughing. Those memories returned to him. That made him convinced he is a failure, not good at doing anything. So he apologized and left. The owner called him again and told him to come tomorrow at the same hour. He went to his tent, spent the night there as usual, and returned. The 2 persons rode the horse. Then the owner said, "Today, you will sort the herd and then gather it." The young man hesitated at first, but the owner insisted. The young man began to guide the owner, and over a period of time, he felt that he enjoyed this work. So he learned why this owner do this himself, and did not hire someone to replace him. After completion, the sorting was correct except of a couple heads that were mixed with the herd. That is not the same category. The owner admitted that this is amazing, and that this is a precedent he had never seen before. He apologized to the young man for his previous laughter, and explained it was spontaneous, not a disrespect. Then he offered a week of training on horse riding and how to use barn tools, so that he could help him in his work. The young man accepted the offer, and how could he refuse? Note that the owner is a cheerful and kind person, and he was generous in his salary. The young man went straight to his tent, collected it, then rode his bike back to his house. Despite the night with joy and amazement, did not leave him. But what is more important than that, he regains his vitality and gains some confidence in his abilities. He went home because he promised the owner after tomorrow he would be ready for training.
After telling the story, it is time to present to quotes. For a better understanding of it, the first says, managing psychological complexes involves getting rid of past pain and embracing the present moment. The young man decided to manage his accumulated problems by resorting to a temporary solution that would not benefit him. It just consumed several years of his youth. Everyone knows that temporary solutions do not help. As for the second, it says, taking the initiative is a mentality that leads to endless possibilities and growth. The young man finally understood this meaning, so he left his room, headed to nature, to at least improve his health, which revealed a skill within him that he did not even know its existence.